Hey, this is Eric from Cafe Watercolor and welcome to another painting video. Today we're going to take a look at this painting of Vancouver in summer. This painting is painted during summer of 2017, so almost 2 years ago. I've learned a lot since then, and even though I can paint a better version of it now, I still have things to share with you in this painting. And since I have the video already recorded, I want to make use of it. So back in the summer of 2017, I visited Vancouver, and during my time there, I did some plein air painting in the downtown area. It was a Sunday, so there weren't many people around. The plein air painting was very rough and actually not that good. But I took the painting along with my memory and experience of the place home and did a bigger, more finished version of the painting. One of the benefits of working at home studio is that I can take my time on the drawing. Of course, not to a point that I overdraw everything, but I get to really study the form of the subject. The main building in the background is the famous Fairmont Hotel, Vancouver, which is an iconic building in downtown Vancouver. I remember standing there on the sidewalk painting this scenery, and I remember how enormous this building is. So the sense of scale in this painting is crucial. After I get the big shapes down, I started to go in and draw a little bit more detail. The perspective is quite important here. While I didn't measure everything very precisely, I do keep in mind that the road has a slope. So the car that's further away is a bit higher, but also smaller. Car is an interesting thing, and it's more tricky than most people think. You can easily make it too tall, too wide, or too long in perspective. Most of the car in my street paintings are in one-point perspective, which doesn't sound that hard, but it's very easy to mess up the foreshortening. This is one of the biggest problems I see in my students' work, and a mistake I still make sometimes. It takes experience and practice to be able to just eyeball everything, so I usually suggest the student to spend more time on drawing and get it to look as good as possible. Drawing the tiny people on the sidewalk and the car that is almost in the foreground. Again, the size of the figure and the car will really sell the scale of this painting. Barrage Street is a very wide street in downtown Vancouver, so this scenery is really quite large. Now I'm just finishing up the drawing with a little bit more detail, cleaning up the line work, and to draw the distant buildings. Now we start the first wash. I want some soft clouds in the sky, so I just used clean water and wet the sky area. Come back in with cobalt blue, leaving some white and paint some warmer darker gray in the bottom of the cloud. These are very soft shade because wet on wet, and before it starts to dry, I extend the wash to the building with warmer colors. Before the wash is dry, I start to drop in some warm green color for the tree. This gives this sort of glow effect because the bright warm green on the tree really affects the lighting of the surrounding area. You want to do this before the wash is dry to get that really nice and soft glow. Now I'm finishing up the first wash by painting the road with warmer gray. I left out most of the car windshield and the hood because they will be receiving light from above. Finishing the wash off with a darker color in the foreground and give a directional line with a clean damp brush. Starting on the second wash, I start off with the hotel roof. It is a nice turquoise color, but I need to be careful not to make it too intense. We need to keep in mind that even though this element is important, it is still background. You don't want to break the depths because you emphasize the building too much. Starting to work my way down and prepare to connect the hotel building to the skyscraper at the front. Before it's dry, I take a smaller brush and drop in some darker, drier mixture to give it some soft detail of the window, leaving some highlight in the structure of the building. All of these are part of visual language that makes the painting more interesting to look at. Connecting the shapes all the way into the background. Just add some more water to the far distance to haze it up a bit. Come back to finish off the skyscraper. Make it darker at the bottom. The darker tone will give the building some weight at the bottom. And I soften the bottom edge out with a clean damp brush. Before it dries, I start to paint the darker greens on the tree. The goal here is try to connect the shape as much as possible. This not only makes the painting look more atmospheric, but the shape read will also be much stronger. Now looking back at this recording, I do wish I paint less detail on the tree. I feel like I'm starting to dabble a little bit too much. There are quite a bit of detail with all the leaves on the tree in the photo reference, and I didn't process them enough to turn them into bigger shape. This definitely takes a little bit more practice and planning. Some more wet on wet works, and I also splatter some water on it to break it up a bit, giving it some textures. After it's dry, I feel the building is too weak, so I go back and give it another layer. This also gives me a chance to give it a bit more detail and contrast. I also paint a little bit of shadow on the roof to establish the lighting. Continue to wash down again and give it some more soft details along the way, just trying to make the building a bit stronger, but still need to be careful that we don't overdo this. It is fun to play in wet on wet because this is watercolor at its best, but you still need to look at the whole picture and ask yourself, does it need more, or it has enough? Give it some crisp, sharp details is very important as well. If all the details are soft detail, the painting will look like mush. And that doesn't look good, especially for hard surface object like a building. Painting the skyscraper again, and now I'm really pushing the dark. I usually play a bit safe in the beginning of the painting because there's no coming back if I paint it too dark. But after I figure out how dark I should go, I will stop, hesitate, and go for it. Paint around the figures and connect to the windshield of the car. Again, connect the shape as you paint is very, very important. Painting the figure and the car. I forgot to record that part, so I have to do a jump cut. Finishing off this yellow car here. Give it some dark detail and do the wheel. And also remember to connect the wheel to the cast shadow. A little bit more indication on the windshield, and then I start to paint the figures on the left. Those tiny figures really sets the scale. And paint the curb side by simply paint the shadow side of the curb. Now I start to paint the buildings on the right. This is the side where I was standing when I did the plein air. So these buildings will need to be dark in order to push the scenes across the street back. You can see that I leave some highlights on the side of the buildings because the sunlight is coming from the left. So the left side of the building are mostly lit. The windows are a bit darker, so that's what those shapes are for. And as always, I connect the shape of the building to the tree. Again, the value gets darker on the bottom. What I do here with the figure is to get a bit paint out by using a clean, almost dry brush and paint their leg while the wash is still wet. This will help to connect the shape and the figure will feel it belongs in the same scene. Moving on to the car on the right. We do see the side of the car here, but only just a little. If you make the side of the car too wide, the perspective will be off and the car will look very long. The shadow of this car is casting on the curb side, and this is why you see the shadow sort of step up when it hits the curb. Giving it the red tail light, now I'm starting to work on the remaining cars. Finishing up the cars in the distance rather quickly. They are further away from us, so we don't need to paint the same amount of detail. This is also the time for me to paint the cast shadow across the street. This shadow is cast by the skyscraper on the left. This shadow is very important because it not only filled up some empty space in the midground, it also creates a connection between both sides of the street. It helps the overall composition to be more interesting and integrated. So from the left side of the street, the shadow goes across the street and to the right sidewalk behind the figures. So now I start to paint the figures on the right. I start off by painting their face with a nice warm orange-red color. Then I start to paint the body and the legs. Don't be afraid to have the color of the face run into the body a little bit. The figure in the front is one of the most important elements in this painting, so I am a bit more careful with this one. I have his right leg at front and the shoulder a bit tilted to suggest that he's walking. At this stage is the matter of painting some small details like the figures and the yellow street signals. While those minor details make the painting feels more alive, they are not what makes a painting good. The detail won't work if the stage you prepared for them is not working. So I always tell my students, before you get too excited about working on details, focus on creating the big shape that looks nice. Only when you have some nice big shapes established will the detail take the painting to the next level. Some wires hanging across the street help to make more connections. The cast shadow from the street lamp on the left, this helps support the dimensional quality of the painting. And here I paint a cast shadow in the foreground. This is not in the photo, but it helps to create depths and it will frame the painting better. Now I'm using some white gouache to get some little sparks of highlight back. Here at the very end, I do a glazing over the road because I feel it's too light. Even though it appears that way in the photo, I want to separate the road and the sky a little bit more. Since the sky is already really bright, I need to darken the road just a bit to separate them. And we are finished. Thank you so much for watching this. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Comment down below if you ever been to downtown Vancouver. Remember to hit the bell icon so you get a notification from me whenever I have new video or when I'm going to do a live demo. Thank you, and I will see you again very soon.